So if you're an ENFJ personality type, we're going to talk about your career options, your choices, maybe how to think about careers. We've got a particular way we want to talk about this today. This actually came about through our personality life path mentorship. We've been doing this mentorship with people where we each week over 8 weeks, culminating a live event, we spend time looking at the archetypical energy of each of the Jungian cognitive functions and the area of life that these deal with. And each week we're going through this process because a lot of people know their personality type, who they are, how they're wired. You as an ENFJ listening right now, you know you're an ENFJ. Okay, now that you know that, where are you headed in life? What's your career, relationships? What's the path, the life path in front of you? And so we're doing a lot of work around attuning those energies to find that life path. And I've noticed that a lot of people in this program, we have several ENFJs and other types, but a lot of people in the program are in a transition moment in their life. Now, maybe it might be relationship, might be life transition, like a stage of life. But a majority of people are talking about career changes. Maybe somebody's been in a career for a while and they're realizing it's run its course. They need to make a change. A few people are starting out in new careers or they're just kind of getting started in life. So this has been a theme that we thought we'd address today, particularly for you listening as an ENFJ, because you might be in a career transition moment. You might be right out of university or out of high school looking to start your career for the first time. You might have done a career for a while. You want to change course. Maybe during lockdowns and the pandemic, that was a tough time and you're looking to do a reset. So as we talk about this today, we're coming from a principle level place, not topical, and we're going to hopefully give you some ideas and things to think about as you're thinking about attuning to the vocation and the career path for your life.
Yeah. Our friend, Dr. Dario Nardi, has been working on this, some research around what he's now calling subtypes. He was reluctant to call them subtypes. He wanted to call them flavors at first.
Yeah. Because
they're variations of each of the types that has some flexibility to it. Meaning that it seems like we come pre-wired with our personality type. Like if you have ENFJ preferences, that seems to be something that the best information we have right now indicates that that's something that's born in. But how that type shows up and the different ways that it can show up, that seems to be more nurture than nature. And one of the most influential components to that is a career choice, especially after the age of 25. So our careers are not only something that we're trying to match our personalities to and find something that is in our wheelhouse and feels good to us. It's also something that is going to be highly influential in the kind of person we become over time.
Yeah.
So our careers are pretty important, which makes sense because we spend 40 plus hours a week doing them as a general rule. So what we want to do is in this episode, we want to talk about not just the careers that ENFJs tend to choose, but we want to talk about those different flavors of ENFJ types and the kind of careers that you might choose depending upon which of those subtypes you must identify with right now. It might explain why you're seeking a career change or you're ready for something different. Maybe you want to explore or flex a different aspect of your personality. And it also makes it so that there's more options on the table because I think we have a tendency to unnecessarily limit our choices based on our best fit type, like our perception of what that type would want.
Yeah, and sometimes people do research online and they go, I'm an ENFJ, what's the best career for me? Like, what should I do? And just following the script that the internet kicks back to you may not be the best option. In that vein, I did my research, Antonia.
Yeah.
I brought my list to this episode
of
the top 10 ENFJ, according to the internet out there in general. This is the top 10 list for ENFJ's career choices. This is what the internet says. Number 1 is teacher, especially at the secondary level. Manager, supervisor, number 2. Counselor, therapist. Human resource manager, nonprofit manager, marketing, advertising executive, salesperson, event planner, social worker, and then number 10 is politician or diplomat. So, I mean, that's a pretty good list that I'm sure if you're an ENFJ listening, you're like, yeah, I could see myself in some of those roles. But what if you're an ENFJ, you're like, man, I'm drawn to other careers besides those maybe stereotypical careers the internet would say. What do I do? Do I just have to buy one of those, or are there other options for me to lean into as far as my vocation in the world?
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, and I think that's a solid list. Every episode we've done of these, you've brought a list of 10 things that are good, good choices for each of the types. And usually the list is solid. It's a solid list. But I'm also hearing things on the list that certain subtypes would actually excel at.
Yeah.
And other subtypes might really struggle with. It might be way out of their wheelhouse. So I think that's the other piece is let's go through these subtypes and talk about why they might be attracted to some of those on the list and others not at all.
Yeah, and usually the stereotypes are like one of the subtypes overtakes all the others as the representative energy of an ENFJ. And it's like, well, that's how ENFJs are. Like, well, that's one flavoring of ENFJs are like that. But maybe there's a lot of them. And so they end up getting all the research and all the things talked about. So you may be a little bit differently wired ENFJ than the others. Let's talk about that today. And we're coming from a principled-based approach as well. We're not going to tell you what exact career to go toward, but we are going to talk about the energies and the attunements of these different styles or expressions of ENFJ that might give you some indication of which career to go toward.
Yeah, and that is very true. There tends to be one of the subtypes or flavors of each of these types that dominate the stereotypes. They become our image of what that type looks like. We talked about, in one podcast, we talked about ISTJs, and the normalizing subtype is the ISTJ stereotype.
Yeah.
But we also talked about types like ESFPs, where I would say that the creative ESFP is the stereotype. So let's go through these and see which one is the stereotype for ENFJ.
Okay, so the 4 subtypes, I'll just list them here and we'll go into them in depth in a moment. There's the dominant subtype, the creative subtype, normalizing ENFJ subtype, and harmonizing ENFJ subtype. And these represents different expressions. You could almost say that ENFJ is like the song, the music sheet, the musical notes on a page. And these subtypes are the performance of that song, the expression. So it can be expressed differently. The timing can be different, all that from a song. But the song itself is still sound. Like you're still an ENFJ, you just express maybe differently.
Right, exactly. And by the way, if you're brand new, if you just discovered you have ENFJ preferences and you're new to all of this, we are going to talk about some of the technical aspects of this, but I think you'll be able to hear yourself in the description of the subtypes. So just hang with us, and I think that it's going to be useful for you, even if you're new to all of this. If you are a type geek, I'll also be speaking to you, or we'll be speaking to you and giving you some of that more technical aspect.